Welcome everyone to the first in our four-part webinar series, Managing Digital Transformation in the Legal Sector. This first webinar is entitled The State of Document Scanning and Capture in the Legal Sector. My name's James Howlett, I'm with Data Capture Solutions, and with me is John Stinchcombe, who will shortly take over to present this webinar for us. We're very pleased to have John. His team is hugely experienced at Kofax in addressing the needs of the wide-ranging needs of consulting companies, all with specialist systems integrations and the needs of end users as well. So we've got huge value to us there. Not only, in fact, his focus on law and legal, but he's also very present in insurance and retail sectors as well. So thank you for being here. I will be monitoring the session over the next half an hour or so, which is how long it's expected to take, give or take any questions that we may be addressing at the end. If you take a look probably on the right of your screen, you'll see there is a questions box which you can use to ask anything that occurs to you during the course of this. As I said, I'll be monitoring that and I'll put some questions to John at the end as those come in. So without further ado then, I would now like to turn over to
So I thought I'd put this screen up. This is a picture of a genuine legal office, a law office. It's in fact a solicitor that I was going to use for conveyancing. And I walked in, saw the scene in front of me and was aghast. But the solicitor assured me that the floor loading was okay. It wasn't actually that I was aghast about, but there we are. But it just shows that this is a problem out there. A lot of organizations simply aren't paying due regard to information management and regulation. They're ignoring, in my opinion, one of the key tenets that paper is no longer an effective information storage medium. It hasn't been for many, many years, yet many organizations still persist with that idea. So moving on. The agenda this afternoon is quite simple. Next 25 minutes or so, we're going to run through the key challenges, typical use cases and solutions, and then the sort of business outcomes that we would reasonably expect from deploying such a solution, scanning and document capture. Before we start though, if you look on the web, there are lots of publications which talk about documents and the sheer overhead of paperwork that's involved. And this was an interesting one from The Economist, that huge statistic here that every hour treating a patient in the US, and I'm sure Europe is not far behind, creates at least 30 minutes of paperwork. I can imagine that resonates very strongly. And you know, there's good reason for that, but the nature of that paperwork is generally unstructured, which makes it very, very difficult to collaborate, to exchange, to normalize, and above all to monitor and process. And so the next slide, pretty similar. Here's an indication of our attitude to paper-based documents and electronic ones. 3/4 of IT professionals surveyed said the first thing they do with a PDF invoice is to print it out. And then rather horrifyingly, after printing it out, around 16% of them scan it right back into the system they use as a PDF attachment. This isn't hearsay. This actually happens. As we go around organizations, prospects and customers, we hear these stories day in, day out. And then, of course, you know, the recipients of those emailed scans of what was originally an electronic document, guess what? They print it out again. That's why the inkjet industry is increasing, and more importantly, documents continue to proliferate. So let's get on to the topic in hand. So the specific challenges facing law firms, and this is really a set of challenges that come from our observations in the market as of today. So the first one is that unstructured documents, unstructured data, document-based information continues to proliferate and showing no sign of abating. it seems to be the only way that professional organizations can communicate, quite rightly. We're a long, long way away from being able to communicate in structured information. Of course, there are processes that are exceptions to that, but generally, when it's litigation cases, when it's supporting information, the so-called trailing documents, those are invariably provided in unstructured form, whether they be by email, by fax, or by paper. They're unstructured, and therefore they're difficult to work with at the other end. So paper-based documents are often the primary communication mechanism between parties. Again, on my work with the insurance side, certainly as soon as an insurance claim becomes legal, goes legal, then certainly the paper starts to grow. It seems to be the de facto standard, continuing to be the de facto standard, even though there are very good standards out there these days and mechanisms for exchanging information electronically. One thing that's very apparent, of course, and is quite particular to legal, is that these long entrenched work practices and preferences mean that paper should be retained for specific tasks and processes. We're not suggesting that we take paper away, and we're not suggesting that paper shouldn't be used to present information to various parties or as a working medium. And one of the things that I'm asked a lot is, do we have to get rid of all the paper? Is a paper light or a go digital strategy, does it have to be completely paperless? Because we have some fee earners that will walk out of the room if that's the case. I'm stating the obvious again, but it's one of the challenges, and that is that paper continues to be the device for legally binding and contractual agreements, and particularly where wet signatures are required. This is an area where there's a lot of development occurring, and Kofax, has a solution for addressing signatures and electronic signatures and signing parties, as they're called. So it's not covered in this particular session, but it is an area that is being addressed. But for now, it continues to be a challenge. And one of the things we mustn't lose sight of is the fact that just because a party or a business partner has switched across to electronic, that's not the solution. Documents are still unstructured. They still present the same problem, whether they're presented via email, SMS, or via a web portal. The fundamental problem is the accessibility and the normalization, the verification of that data. There's a need as well in the law firms that we meet. There's a constant mantra that they need to improve productivity, improve flexibility of working and collaboration and sharing, whilst at the same time, of course, preserving access control and data protection. Well, of course, reducing costs at all times. So it's a competitive landscape in certain parts of the legal industry, and cost reduction is one of the core drivers for this technology. And then finally, as an interesting one, the genie is out of the bottle, really. Everyone knows that to improve efficiency, we need to go digital. But one of the challenges is how to do it, the scope of the project, and even where to start. And so that's one of the challenges in getting your arms around these sort of projects and initiatives. So those are the challenges that we see out there. About a year ago, DCS and Kofax ran a survey, and I'm going to run through those results very briefly. Put the question, will you benefit from an investment in capture, that's a fancy word for scanning, and document management technology? And then it's one of these where you agree or disagree. So disagree is on the left-hand side, the pale blue, and strong agreement is dark blue. And so very interesting to the question, the volume of inbound paper in law firms will increase. The consensus is, yes, it will. There's a minority that say it won't, but generally all are agreed that it will. The diversity of paper documents will increase. Well, not surprisingly, a lot of law firms are focused on standard processes, and so, they're sort of neutral on that point. In response to the question, legal documents are too complex to be automatically processed. Quite interesting here. There was an agreement with that, but also a body of users that disagreed. And so, there's a little bit of ambiguity in the results. By the way, the sample size here is over 50 firms took part in this survey. So it's statistically not significant, but useful results in the main. The fourth question, switching to electronic case files and documentation will reduce administrative costs. Well, yes, of course they will. And 44% agreed with that sentiment or that notion, as will electronic records and automated distribution provide greater flexibility to the fee earner teams. No doubt about it. If we can go digital, take paper out of the equation, certainly as an information storage mechanism and distribution mechanism, then there's going to be improved efficiency and flexibility there. So again, interesting set of results from the question, have you automated your document-based processes already? About a fifth of respondents already have what they consider to be a digital mailroom, where they're scanning in the mailroom, the post room as we call it in the UK, so before the paper arrives on the desks of fee earners and legal teams. About a quarter of respondents already have OCR or some degree of data capture, and that's no surprise. OCR on the desktop is quite prevalent in legal firms as a convenience and an office automation tool. It would be interesting to do a wider survey to find out how many are using it as an indexing tool rather than straight OCR. And then about a quarter are using automated classification of documents based on tags and additional information about the documents. Again, I suspect that this is a feature of many case management systems, back-end systems, that offer that sort of facility for electronic documents coming in. Automated classification, capturing and classification of electronic documents is quite prevalent out there. About 28% of organizations reported they use it today. And then 31%, this is the surprising one for me, 31% allow customers and suppliers to submit scanned documents via web-based systems. I knew that a lot of law firms allowed email attachments. That's the only surprise on that result. And then the use of mobile technology at 21%. This is where organizations believe that their customers, their clients and partners are using email staged on a smart device to send attachments. Again, the survey didn't go into a great degree of granularity around specific apps that are used for securely submitting documents. So the next question, how do you think you can reduce the cost of administration? A cool over 50%, 56% said that scanning and capture of documents on receipt believe that that's a way of reducing the cost of automation. Slightly less thought that automated tagging, indexing and classification of documents would achieve the same end. And then we're down to 25% who believe that automating the distribution of documents via workflow or business process management helps. I suspect the 25% is a belief that the case management system already stages that, and so there may be a case for that. And then 40% believe that encouraging clients and suppliers, partners to scan documents through their mobile devices or uploading via web will actually save administration times. That's slightly lower than I would have thought. You know, self-service is one of those areas where you can make massive savings. So that was the survey. You can review that after the session. So let's run on to typical use cases and solutions. And for this, as a preamble, I'm just going to look at the value of scanning and document capture out there generically. There are really 4 steps. The first one is the most simplistic step, and that is to digitize information for better access and compliance, if that's your goal. And this will, as value to the business, improve information visibility. Implementing a digital mailroom or having a go digital policy or strategy will certainly improve information access. The next one is to achieve operational excellence, and this is where we're working on the data, whether it be scanned information or electronically received, to verify it, to match it, and validate it against your back-end systems, whether those be your practice management system or your case management system, or indeed a client's own data. And so if we can automate that matching, we take away a whole swathe of administrative overhead, low value-added tasks, which are time-consuming and expensive to operate. So the next phase, the next step, is a big jump, and this is really to increase customer engagement. If you increase customer engagement, you're less likely to receive follow-up calls from customers, meaning that your teams will have more time to work on the process in hand. Establishing levels of engagement and collaboration in terms of efficiency. Everybody knows where they are in the process because everyone's involved. You know, it encompasses apps, it encompasses access to information, self-service, but also huge amounts of automation to be able to keep up with what are higher expectations from your clients. And then finally, delivering enterprise agility. This is radically transforming and simplifying the first mile of customer interactions. What do we mean by that? The first mile of any business process is one where there's a huge exchange of information intensive exchanges as you onboard the client or you onboard the matter. And so as an organization, you need to be able to respond to changes in regulation, changes in business practice, or changes in business climate, you know, in the expectations of customers. Very often you can't change your back-end systems of record, your case management or content management systems. So you need really a front-end, very adaptable system that can do that. So the next stage is really looking at use cases. I split this down for simplicity into traditional versus go digital type strategy. On the traditional side, for many years, digital copier providers, vendors, otherwise known as multifunction peripherals or multifunction devices, have offered scan to email, or scan to folder, or scan to case facilities built into their devices. They're generally highly proprietary, they're generally very useful, and it's been one of the staples, if you like, of a traditional move to a degree of digitization. And then we have production or batch scanning for archiving. This is after the case has been closed, and it's really a way of tidying up, making the case notes and documentation available for searching, whilst those are archived off to off-site storage to save costs on city centre office locations. So that's the traditional area. If we look at a summary of the go digital type strategies, digital mailroom is top of the tree. This is where we route everything through a system that captures, classifies, and auto-indexes, and then captures to process. So we're capturing the document either in paper form by digitizing it, or electronically by intercepting email. We could be monitoring a web portal as well as social media and SMS. We're then classifying the document to figure out what it is, trying to find some index information so that we can match it against a live client matter or case. The next step is to offer capture at point of origination. So this is offering partners and clients the ability to scan or capture documents at the origination point. And the next point really plays into that. Truncating paper at source is a great way of improving efficiency. And then extending the process of handling documents that are not in good order. This is one of the keys, really shielding organizations from the errors and omissions before they get into back-end case management and practice management systems. So looking at these in a bit more detail, MFP integration for a traditional use case provides support to teams working with local copies. So what would happen is an administrator will receive a document, and for ease and convenience, he or she will go to the copier, typically scan it to themselves, open it up in email, drag it to case management, and then perhaps forward on a link to a recipient. The great thing about this is that smaller firms can use this as a springboard into a digital mailroom approach. Today's MFPs are very, very competent, high quality, fast, reliable, all the good things that you'd expect from a production scanner. They're very convenient with very few compromises. The only compromise I would call out would be the fact that a lot of the software is very proprietary. So you do tend to run the risk of getting locked into one manufacturer or another. And then, as I mentioned earlier, these devices can be easily incorporated into a Go Digital strategy. So Scan to Archive has traditionally been an extension of the facilities or repro graphics group in law firms. As I mentioned earlier, it's Scan to Archive when a case or matter is closed, so it's not really digitizing the business, the process. You know, this has traditionally been paper moving around the organization, and its relevance has really recently been extended to litigation support. Now, many courts, or the court service, I should say, is on a course to switch to digital submissions. In contrast, the Go Digital approach, digital mailroom, transforming documents at the earliest opportunity. It's trying to eliminate paper where you can, that's not mandatory, but where you can at source, so that fee earners and legal teams are working on the electronic version rather than paper. We'd be first to accept that this is an impossible dream. As I alluded to earlier, there are work practices, conventions, and preferences, which mean that some parts of the business prefer to work from paper, but the principle is that we digitize those before distributing them. And the key thing here, of course, is we reduce the latency by eliminating the physical delivery stage, and we eliminate any geographic boundaries. So law firms that are growing through acquisition or by merger are able to keep their local presence intact, to keep their fee earners back at their original offices, yet have them participate in cases that may be originated from different locations. It enhances productivity of fee earners and legal teams by offering a searchable layer, but also extracting relevant metadata and index data. Now, previously in a manual system, because of the labor overhead, only a limited amount of data would have been extracted. If you're using technology to do this, there really is no restriction. As long as the data can be located or identified, extracted and verified, then this can be called out and extracted as additional data sets, which may support the fee earner in their job or may provide the management team with analysis of document sets and cases. So this point is really an extension of the one previously made. It extends the value of documents by extracting a wider data set. Even the availability of metadata such as the date and time that a document was received into the firm, is of value. If that document has been presented by a client on a mobile device, such as a smartphone or tablet, then we're able to identify the location and also the unique device that it was captured from. That may or may not be of great interest or value to the firm. As I alluded to earlier, in larger projects, this data is automatically feeding analytics and web dashboards to allow a near real-time analysis of inbound documentation. This is particularly important where firms are engaged in fixed-fee, high-volume work, where it's critical to meet SLAs for customer satisfaction purposes, but also in order to make a reasonable margin from the work. And of course, if you digitize at source, then you're automating the archive function automatically. And so you don't then have to digitize or scan and index the document at the end of the case. It's already done for you. It's simply a content management or records management, document management function to archive that electronic case away. So capture at point of origination, great example here is eliminating the challenge of geographically dispersed teams. A lot of law firms we speak to are uncomfortable with the central post office or PO box approach. They prefer that clients continue to send documents, physical documents, to the office they've always worked with. If that office has a high-speed scanner or an MFP or some device, a network-connected scanner, they can capture as a mini digital mailroom into a central resource that performs the classification, indexing, and export to the case management system. The local teams are then at will free to work on the paper copies, but they also have the backup and analysis of the electronic one as a part of the same process. So you need to support a wide range of devices. Web scanning is very popular because there's a zero footprint, it's easily deployed, it's typically used by personal level scanners, and Kofax has a variety of solutions to achieve this. One of the largest sites in the UK has no less than 1,600 locations that are scanning legally compliant documentation through a custom web portal that was built with the Kofax web capture solution. The beauty of these is that they can also be used by clients as well, and the client is faced with a custom screen that allows them to, with confidence, capture a document, follow the instructions, understand how to use the system without having to download an application or configure anything on their home PC or workstation. Mobile is obviously a key technology. These are very effective in enabling clients to quickly secure a vital trailing document. We're not suggesting that they should be used for mass submission of core documents, but if you're waiting for a 2 or 3 page agreement or some sort of one-page document that is sensitive in nature, then a mobile device allows you to quickly and effectively capture that with great convenience and security. And then we mustn't forget fax, email, and secure FTP. We need to support those with a high degree of capability as well. So self-service is very important for closer engagement, as I've discussed earlier, improve customer service, SLA attainment, and reduce costs. And above all, we've got to ensure that we deliver high process integrity, security, document legibility, ease of use, data protection, reliability, and resilience. So enabling clients to truncate paper, the document submission portal is a very effective way of allowing customers to use their own scanners or MFPs with excellent results. There's no trace of the document on their host system, and there's no email used, so hacking or disclosure of family email passwords and usernames isn't a compromise. The Kofax solution, for example, brings everything into memory, and so nothing is ever laid to disk, which is a great security feature. Mobile capture, as I mentioned earlier, provides a very high degree of customer experience and engagement. Plus, today's contemporary smart devices do produce outstanding results in terms of legibility and speed. So extended processing, what do we mean by this? This is being able to manage the inbound document set, no matter where it's come from, so that we can handle errors and omissions speedily before they get into a case management or back-end system. So those are often called documents that are not in good order, and they may require a iterative process of going back to the client, requesting a signed version of the document they've just sent over. These sort of systems should manage that interaction. The objective here is to make sure that case management back-end systems only receive clean, verified documents and data. And very important that we provide process audit and reporting, as well as being able to resource scheduling and optimization, particularly in these larger scale projects. And Kofax solution for that would be our total agility solution for BPM style projects. So we're on to the last phase, business outcomes. So what can we realistically seek to achieve here? Well, we'll start with the hot topic of cost reduction. It remains today, lower office space requirements are one of the key drivers. If you remember that sort of jokey picture I put up first, if you're having to store client files in prime real estate, then it's expensive. And so go digital, particularly for transactional type processes or transactional type cases, is really the only way. We can lower handling costs and reproduction costs by eliminating the low value add tasks such as indexing and matching against case management systems. We decrease manual intervention, typically reducing the number of errors and keystrokes by matching inbound documents against case management. Tighter compliance, increasing regulation around data protection and privacy means that the quicker you are able to secure those documents electronically, the safer they are generally. You can archive the paper documents away so that they're away from prying eyes or other dangers. And it's aligned with industry best practice. And then, most importantly, we get improved client satisfaction through improved process cycle times. We're getting back to people faster. We're reducing the latency of specific tasks because knowledge workers are receiving work that's ready to be worked on rather than work that has to be prepped first. Improved service through focus on value add, hence my point about fee earners doing their core objectives rather than becoming data entry clerks, and closer engagement and self-service is generally considered a way of getting closer to the customer, plus better reporting such as attainment of SLAs so you can spot bottlenecks very early on and address them in a timely manner. With that, I thank you for your attention. I'm going to ask James if we've had any questions via the portal. James.
Yes, just one or two, John. Thanks very much indeed. There's a question about the start to finish integrity of an entire matter file. How is the challenge addressed, it says, of maintaining integrity of a file from the start of a case to a finish of it?
Okay, so I suspect that this is around the fact that documents through the life cycle of a case arrive and are scanned, individually, and how do you thread them all together to ensure that there's integrity. So in the Kofax system, we're maintaining lots of metadata to ensure that the document is tagged appropriately, and it's all around process really. There's a very useful BSI standard. It used to be known as PD 0008. It's now the BSI 0008 standard, which is entitled something like the process, ensuring process integrity of documents that will be used for legal admissibility. No software package can be compliant with such a standard, but what we can do is help achieve that standard by delivering capabilities and data that help you comply with those processes.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got another one here, John, which frankly seems a bit provocative, to be honest, as I think I already know the answer. But
okay, bring it on.
Well, the question is simply: do you know of any law firm clients that you've come across who are completely paper-free?
Oh, very good. Yeah. Actually, I don't. So that might be a shock to the audience, coming from somebody who's essentially a consultant but in sales. No, I think completely paper-free, apart from some very specific cases like conveyancing, where you could eliminate the paper because it's a sort of transactional approach. But for general law, I think a lot of fee earners would feel comfortable with some paper documentation to work with, and it's particularly the case where they have to review an agreement or contract that needs, of course, to be signed using a wet signature. And so, I don't think we'll ever get in our lifetimes to completely paper-free. So, good question.
Okay, there is just one other one, which has to do with documents that need to remain as paper. What are the types of documents that the legal profession will always likely to need to remain in paper format?
So there are some documents, such as deeds and wills, for example, that are originals. They don't belong to the law firm, and that need to be retained and returned to the client. So those would be examples, and of course we can take copies of them, carefully take copies of them, and then mark them for return to the client. Those would be about the only ones, as well as agreements and contracts that have a wet signature associated with them. But yeah, those would be the only ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
Super, thanks, John. That was all the questions that we received in. Thank you very much indeed for that. That about wraps it up. So, with thanks once again to John Stinchcombe, I wish you all a very good afternoon. Thank you very much.